yourself a suit and tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
Yes, indeed. This time on a Tuesday morning, David Whiting sashays into the studio to take your calls on all things legal. Good morning.
Good morning, Ali. Sachet. Haven't done a lot of sashaying recently.
I don't know. Do you not like that term?
Oh, I love the term. Yep.
You can sashay. Anyone can
Thank
sashay.
you.
1300 222 774. There are some spaces left on the board. So if you have a question for David Whiting, now is the time. David, you had some homework.
I did. It's a homework that's risen probably 4 times this year and not yet at the point where I'm happy with the answer. In one of the best way to describe it is a large truck drives down the street, clips an overhead wire. The overhead wire then pulls off a fascia or something on the front of a house. And the question is, who's responsible and how do you get them to pay? Now, my starting premise, it's a question of heights of vehicles, codes of practice for overhead wires. It's overhead wires which are no longer required but nobody removes them. So, for example, the house is now serviced by NBN but nobody removes the old telephone wire. And in one case it was pulling off a piece of fascia and another was a electrical fault. So the house became, you weren't allowed to turn anything on until the electricity was fixed. We're doing some further investigation, but I think my premise is that it's the person who drives the truck that causes the problem. That's the proximate cause of the problem. It doesn't mean that there might not be some contribution by the person who owns or controls the overhead wire for failing to maintain it appropriately.
So it would have to be a question, wouldn't it, of whether it was at the appropriate regulated height, for example?
Well, yeah, well, from the point of view of their contribution, so there'll be a code of practice that deals with what the maximum heights or the minimum heights are. But in most cases, the householder is simply told to make a claim on their insurance and pay the excess. And the problem, so in a sense, the problem doesn't get addressed at a structural level. So, not yet got the answer.
No, you'd think it would be easier than that, wouldn't you? But anyway.
Well, if you knew it was the garbage truck, then you should be talking to the council.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yep.
Exactly. And then the council can assess whether what was hit was at an appropriate level, and if it was, then it goes back to the garbage.
Well, no,
people.
it gets shared.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there you go. Tom in Bandura. Good morning, Tom. Tom.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Yes. Hi. Look, I've got a question about distribution of an estate. My mother died in July last year. She left a will. It was to be the estate was to be divided equally amongst all my siblings. 2 of my siblings have been executors, but the relationship's completely broken down, and that because they refuse to give any information. So I've got all I've got is I've managed to get off the probate site the will and the that was lodged and the
inventory of assets
and the
liabilities.
inventory.
So you'll know how big the estate is, and you're entitled to an equal share.
And I'm entitled to an equal share. But in terms of, the will wasn't actually lodged until December last year, so
Yes.
probate wasn't granted until
Is there a house in the estate?
January. No.
So it's some bank accounts, some shares, and perhaps a refund from the aged care facility.
Yeah, it's really simple. And
Have any of your other siblings received any money?
No. Look, the problem is relationships that broken down so much. No one seems to want to talk to me, and I can't get.
Oh, so it's you
out of
against the
anyone.
rest of the world, is it, or is it or a group of you against the 2?
It seems to be me against the others, and particularly the executives. The others don't want to seem to know about it, and I can't get the information. I'm just wondering, is this reasonable? I mean, to take so long.
Not the way you've described it, it's not reasonable. It can easily take a couple of months to get an application for a grant of probate in, and COVID will have slowed everybody down, so there could well be some logistical issues. But I would have thought that if they got probate in January, there may be some tax issues, but there would be no reason why a substantial distribution of the estate isn't made.
Yeah.
So what does Tom do?
The problem is that the answer is expensive, Ellie. What's technically required is an application to the Supreme Court to have them replaced as executors of the estate. So they get fired, someone else gets the job. But the problem is, Tom, that there's a general principle they can use they were appointed by your mum to take the role. So they're able to use, they've got first call on the estate assets to fight you. So that's not where you want to go. So it is possible for you, if that was your long-term plan, I would be looking at trying to set them up with some letters over a period of time that say, you know, I know the estate is in this order, I know what the form of the assets were from the inventory, I know that I'm entitled to an equal share, can you give me a time frame for the realisation of the assets, the lodgement of any tax returns that might be required, and why can't you make an interim distribution? Is where I would start.
Yep.
I just don't want you to spend lots of money. I don't want to dissipate the estate having the fight.
That sounds like a very sensible plan, as you would expect from David Whiting. Olivia in Melbourne. Hi, Olivia.
Oh, good morning. I have a question about victims of crime compensation. My ex-husband was charged and jailed for a series of offences against me and family violence offences. And I just wonder if what the process is for me to apply for some kind of compensation.
You start at VCAT. I think the Victims of Crime Tribunal is I think administratively run as part of VCAT. But I can run through the process for you next week if you like, Olivia, if that might be where you'd like to start.
Yeah, that would be good. My issue is I'm not sure what he was officially charged with, and I don't know if I need that information or not.
It would certainly help if you were. Were you required to complete a victim impact statement?
I actually declined to do that. I was reluctant to do that just because I didn't want...
you didn't want to be further exposed?
No, I didn't. And I certainly...
So, Olivia, if you go to the police station from which he was charged, they will be able to give you some information. You can also... Was he in the magistrate's court or the county court?
I believe it was the magistrate's court.
Then you can go to the magistrate's court and you can get details of the case and the orders that were made.
Olivia, and if you tune in again next week and David will run you through a bit more of the process and how it should follow, and we're really sorry that you found yourself in that position. Russell in Pakenham. Hi, Russell.
Good morning, and thank you for taking my call. A question regarding my wife's car was parked, and while parked it was severely damaged by another car. Now, she has insurance and the other car has insurance. The other car admits liability. The problem is my wife's car is not a new car. It only had $2,000 insurance, and we're concerned the panel beater will say the damage exceeds your insurance cover, we're going to have to write the car off.
So you're looking at it from the wrong point of view, Russell. Your wife's insurance is what's called extended third party, so fire and theft. So you're not going to make a claim on your insurer, you're going to make a claim on the other driver who will then claim on his or her insurance. And the question is going to be whether or not the vehicle is an economic repair.
Well, yes.
But it doesn't matter how much Russell's got the car insured for, does it? That's sort of irrelevant.
So what Russell's got is insurance where the agreed value of his car is $2,000. That's got nothing to do with it, Russell. The question will be, whatever the car is worth today, what's it going to cost to repair that? And so if you've got a $2,000 car prior to the accident and it's a $1,500 repair bill, the question is, what's the wreck worth? And if it's worth more than $500, you don't get it repaired. If it's worth less than $500, you do.
The problem is my wife would then have to buy another car.
Well, she'd need to find another car and buy it. Yes, she would. But in theory, at least, Russell, a $2,000 car would be replaced by a $2,000 car.
Well, you can't find one like that now, unfortunately. Most cars, even minimal cars, are, going to cost more than $2,000.
Then perhaps we're really talking about what is your car worth. If you tell me it's worth $2,000, my argument stands. If you come along and say, look, cars are going for silly prices these days, nothing is cheap, used cars have got more expensive, then your car is no longer worth $2,000. It's worth whatever it is.
But David, the person who has accepted responsibility, their insurance company will look at Russell's car and they'll make a judgment as to whether to fix it or write it off. Is that correct?
Technically, what they'll do is they'll reach an agreement with him as to the amount that is to be paid, or they'll assess it as not repairable. So whether he repairs it or not is entirely up to Russell.
But they'll assess how much they give
to the process.
Yes. But that will not be connected to the $2,000 that Russell's got the cars insured for. That will be connected to what they consider the value of the car to be.
Yes.
Right. Good luck, Russell. Mary in Glenaris. Hi, Mary.
Oh, hello. Morning. David, I do accounts for a very small business, a service business, and I send out invoices by email. I then send a second email when payment hasn't been made. I then send a third email. I then text. I send a voicemail. Can you give me some advice if I still haven't had payment through that, after that process?
I think that what you ought to be doing is making a decision in relation to the ones that you want to pursue, and I would be issuing proceedings at VCAT. Right now, my expectation is that all of the claims will be in a particular format, and they'll all be the same kind of work done. So you might consider engaging a lawyer to help you draft the first one, and that then becomes the business's templates for all the others. Now, if you go to VCAT, you are successful and you represent yourself, you will get back the application fee to VCAT. But if you choose to use a lawyer, you won't get the lawyer costs. So you might invest in some assistance to get your first claim up and running and use that as a template for the others. And that you'll pay a VCAT fee depending on the amount you're seeking to recover.
And you'll have to wait for VCAT to get to the case.
Well, it may be that they'll end up with a default judgment because the other side don't do anything.
Yeah. Peter, in Vermont South, you are on with David.
Yes. I sold a telescope to a friend of mine, and 6 months later he said it was faulty, and he wanted his money back. And then he said he can sell it on, and a year later he comes back and he says the deal didn't go through, and he wanted his money back. And am I obliged to give him his money?
No. Can we work out what it is that you really want to do, Peter? Do you think it was faulty?
The mirror, apparently the main mirror needs resilvering.
Yes, but I'm asking, at the time you sold it to him, did you think there was anything wrong with it?
I was in two ways about it.
And did you let your friend? Remember, we're talking about selling to a friend here. Did your friend know of your uncertainty as to the quality of what you were selling him?
He took a gamble.
Did he know he was taking a gamble, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, so the strict answer is that because this is a private sale, you're not a trader, the Australian consumer law doesn't apply to you. So the deceptive and misleading conduct wouldn't apply. He might have an argument that the goods are not fit for the purpose, but fancy taking 6 months to work out that you can't see the night sky, well, presumably the night sky, that you thought you were looking at.
Well, it was one and a half years in total.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
So, look, Peter, I don't see... In law, you don't have to do a thing. But you did sell to a friend. You've sold goods that you thought were reasonably dodgy, and I'm not absolutely convinced you told him about it.
But it did seem like it took him a while to work out there was a problem.
Yeah, it did, doesn't it?
would have
So he
thought it
got
might have
some
been
value.
quicker. Yeah.
So, Peter, the strict answer to your question is no, and I'm not sure that I'd ever give him everything back, but I might consider a discount.
Yeah, to keep a friend. Katie in Clunes. Hi, Katie.
Hi, guys. David, you might remember I called late last year about my friend's farm with the horses that were owned by the previous landowner, and they were refusing to remove them.
I did, and you rang the Shire and they disappeared.
Yeah, they did disappear, but then a couple of weeks ago, the fences were cut and the horses have reappeared. So they've brought them back and dumped them on the land.
Wow. You're
Yeah.
the only person in Clunes with feed, are you?
It's actually a friend's farm in Trentham, but I went there the other day to do some work, and I was just like, what the heck is going on here? And I spoke to my friend, and they're like, yep, they've brought the horses back.
Well,
So what
do we
can
know
they
they're
do?
the same horses?
Yeah, I recognise them. They're all, yeah.
I would simply be, Trentham is Macedon Rangers or...
Macedon Rangers.
Macedon Rangers. I would be ringing the Macedon Rangers and say, someone's dumped some horses in my property, can you come and get them, please?
Yeah, is that like the simplest thing to do? It's not a police matter, is it?
No, it's not a police... Well, the cutting down of the fences is a police matter, but you're not
It's
going
hard
to get
when
a great
something's
deal
been
of interest.
given to you as opposed to stolen from you.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
So
just the
I would be
weirdest
ringing
thing.
the pound at Macedon and see where you go from there.
Katie, how many horses are we talking?
It was originally over 50 horses, and now I think it's about 20.
That have just been put back on the property. That's huge.
Yeah. It's a lot of... And they're like...
And they
they're
didn't
well known.
notice any truck coming up and... Like, that's
No,
not
it
one
would've been
horse
in
snuck
a truck.
over a fence. That's...
I don't think it's in the township. Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's on the edge of the township, and it's definitely Hepburn Shire, so we'll get in touch
Oh,
with them.
Hepburn.
They've had the RSPCA come out to assess the horses because they're incredibly malnourished. But yeah, just to know what else do I think.
I would be talking to the Shire and get them to collect the horses. Ali, what had happened was that Katie rang because the horses had been adjusted and not removed. And then there was the threat to go to the Shire and the horses all disappeared, and now 4 months later they've come back.
Come back. Wow. And that's terrible. And it's particularly if they're not in good condition. What an extraordinary story. Katie, let us know how you go with that. We would love to stay in touch. Cedric in Watsonia. Hi, Cedric.
Hi, good morning. My question is, in short, how do you locate a person who has moved you would like to somehow try and get back a large sum of money? Some of the other things is that you suspect there's been grooming, you suspect the victim has...
So you need to try and find this person, Cedric. How do you find someone if you want to try and commence proceedings?
It gets harder every day because most mobile telephone numbers are not in the phone book. And of course nobody has, there's a white pages, but go find one, but you can do it electronically. What you might find that they are connected with a company. If you know their full name, you can do what's called a related person search on the ASIC database. Fascinating thing, of course, is that if you've got a registered business name in the name of an individual, it doesn't disclose your residential address or your business address. There is an index of landowners in Victoria, but it's an offence to use the index other for the purpose of tracking somebody down. There is the electoral roll, but in theory there are very tight rules about what you can do it for.
Yeah, and who can access it?
Well, it's available at every electoral office, but they actively discourage you using it to find people. There are some tight rules about what you can and can't do.
And is finding someone for the purposes of commencing proceedings against them a valid...
I think let's make that homework for next week.
Yeah.
Precisely what can you do with the electoral roll?
Absolutely.
So it's very hard. Cedric, do you know where they used to live?
We know a former address. I know the agents, but the other things I'd like to say, most of that I've already done. I believe this person holds overseas citizenship and residence in Australia. I have an ABN, which since the alleged offence, the ABN has changed names, so that ABN is no longer held by this person.
Cedric, are you interested in a police case or a civil damages case?
The police case has already been terminated. The police believe there's probably been an offence, but there's very little chance of getting proof beyond reasonable doubt, so they've dropped the investigation.
All right. And have they provided you with the address of the person that when they last interviewed that person?
They haven't interviewed the person.
Okay.
They've taken
statements from other people. I suppose, yes. Cedric, what I would do is I'd knock on the door of the last place that you knew that they lived and ask, do you have a forwarding address for X or Y or Z? And see what happens.
Gee, it's difficult, isn't it, though?
Yes.
Yeah. I wasn't quite aware of how difficult it could be.
Of course, if they're not Australian citizens, they won't be on the federal electoral roll.
No, indeed. David, thank you. David will be back here next week. So if you didn't get your question answered this week, have another go next week. And he's also got a bit of homework. David Whiting, see you next week.
I'll be back.